Hello, this is John with Theology Ed. This is part 20 of the iPetGoat 2 Explained series. This is an important one to understand iPetGoat 2. We're going to go back all the way to part 2 of the series, in which I discussed how we're represented as dying in the video on one layer of meaning. There's our death taking place when we commit suicide, supposedly, after the water event False Flag. You look here, we have the massive 9/11 attack represented, and we also have a massive water event represented here. If you look, we have the fence going into the water, representing a new quote-unquote coastline, if you want to call it that, where there's been erosion and things just washed away here. It's gone, and there's a new body of water, destruction everywhere, and this man, the dancer, is stranded on an island, just like the people in 2001 were stranded in the Twin Towers and jumping out of the windows. He's jumping out and going to kill himself, okay, because he's stuck. And when he does this, we noted in part 2, he immediately, when he hits the water, we pass through, the camera angle, if you want to call it that, passes through this cleft in the rocks, and we get this fog. We enter into this fog. And out of that fog, we see the boat of Anubis arise. What happened is, with his death, we transitioned into the realm of the dead. Now we're in the underworld. And he is supposed to be the fire of truth guy going through. And the fire of truth character, of course, the Jesus-like character people call him, supposed to represent him. But it's not even just representing us who die. More importantly, we've seen now, it represents Rahor Kuat, the active aspect of Heru Raha, which is the way of saying vengeful war of god Horus. Okay, and he represents that, and he represents Rahor Kuat, what? Bringing in the Aeon of Horus, which is very important to the Thelemites. Now, we've talked about all of that before. I'll go over some more of that here in a minute, so it'll make sense to many of the new people here. I know there's a lot of new people that just came over from Shaking My Head Productions. Welcome. It's good to go back and see all those other videos. It really helps add a lot of context to what's going on and a foundation for a lot of the claims. Sometimes I take things for granted. But I'm going to do some review here that'll help you sort of catch up. So we have this death and suicide, and we end up in the underworld. And the question was this. This guy, now we know Rahor Kuat. Rahor Kuat is doing all this destruction in the underworld. I mean, these are all dead people. They're already ash, right? They're lifeless because they're in the underworld, and he's creating great destruction down here. He's in the boats. This is the boat of Anubis. He's still doing his underworld journey, and the fish are jumping in. This is inside the big cathedral or the church. The Christians, in general, are hopping in. They're ready to go along with him, even to their death. Now they're going to die in the boat of Anubis and go along his journey, be taken out into the new Aeon. And so here he is when he exits that whole journey into the sunlight finally. You see the fish are still in there. The water breaks and he's birthed. But you see the fish are all in there. They're dying or dead. And he stands here looking away, and all of this stuff is destroyed. The USA, that's got a tsunami coming over, wiping out the buildings, and the Catholic Church is toppling. He's destroyed all of this. In fact, he's destroying what was the place where he was at in the underworld. That was represented as the underworld. Now the question is, why in the world is he destroying the underworld, and what does that have to do with us here in the living world of the above world, or whatever you want to call it? Okay, what is that all about? Now remember, the Aeon of Horus, according to the Thelemites, is what comes in place of the Aeon of Osiris. They have 3 Aeons in their sort of theology of history. They have the 3 Aeons. The first was the Aeon of Isis. This is from Thelemopedia. The Aeon of Isis, and it was maternal. Crowley characterized, he says it was characterized by pagan worship of the mother and nature. That ended about 2,000 years ago. Then the next Aeon began. That's the Aeon of Osiris. It's considered to be dominated by the paternal principle, so it's the Aeon of the father, and the formula of the dying God. So dying Jesus, rising from the dead. Okay, this Aeon was characterized by that of self-sacrifice and submission to the Father God. the formula of Osiris, whose word is Io, so that men worshipped man, thinking him subject to death, and his victory dependent upon resurrection. Okay. So this is Crowley talking. He says, the formula of Osiris is this Iao, so that men worshipped man, thinking him subject to death, and his victory dependent upon resurrection. So this death and resurrection, this also God becoming man was a key to this era, so that God could die and rise again. He also says of the Aeon of Osiris that the second Aeon, that's the Aeon of Osiris because the first one was Isis, is of suffering and death. The spiritual strives to ignore the material. Christianity and all cognate religions worship death, glorify suffering, deify corpses. So you see how he's viewing this. If you look in a lot of churches, they'll have a crucifix where you have the dead, the depiction of a dead Christ. It's like worshiping a dead human, deifying a corpse. Of course, that representation is not a good one to have. And Christ, in fact, isn't on a cross. He rose from the dead, all that. But even that, he's saying that's all part of the Aeon of Osiris, and that needs to be gotten rid of because we're replacing it, according to him, with the Aeon of Horus. And the Aeon of Horus is described like this: the crowned and conquering child who dieth not, nor is reborn, but goeth radiant ever upon his way. Even so goeth the sun. For as it is now known that night is but the shadow of the earth, so death is but the shadow of the body that veileth his light from its bearer. The Aeon of Horus is here, and its first flower may well be this, that, freed of the obsession of the doom of the ego in death, and of the limitation of the mind by reason, the best men again set out with eager eyes upon the path of the wise, the mountain track of the goat, and then the untrodden ridge that leads to the ice-gleaming pinnacles of mastery. Okay, so the video, iPet Goat 2, when you go through the series, you'll see how we got there. The video is a summoning ritual calling up these demons and spirits, Horus and Harpocrates in particular, to come forth and to conquer and to put down whatever is left of the Aeon of Osiris. They think the Aeon of Horus began in 1904. That's when Lucifer gave, under the name of Aiwass, gave Crowley a book of the law, religious book, basically their sacred text. And he dictated it to him. And Crowley wrote it all down, said he audibly heard him, and he insisted this was a real personal interaction. And he got this book in 1904, and that's when the Aeon of Horus began. But it doesn't just switch all at one moment. It's not like they woke up in 1905 and there was no more Christianity, no more whatever this description of the Aeon of Osiris is. So there's this transition, and what they're doing in this video is they're summoning Horus, Rahor Kuat in particular, the god of vengeance and war, to come forth and put down whatever's left of the Aeon of Osiris. Now, and so when we look at this, we say, so what does that have to do with the topic of this video, this discussion of the underworld, his conquering in the underworld? Now, when we look at Osiris, who is Osiris? This is again Thelemopedia. Osiris is one of the most important of ancient Egyptian deities. He is a life, death, rebirth deity. Osiris was the Egyptian god of the underworld. That's who he was. How did he get that? Well, here's the myth, one version of it. Osiris is the mythological father of the god Horus, whose conception is described in the Osiris myth, a central myth in ancient Egyptian belief. The myth describes Osiris as having been killed by his brother, Set, who wanted Osiris's throne. His wife Isis finds the body of Osiris and hides it in the reeds, where it is found and dismembered by Seth. Isis retrieves and joins the fragmented pieces of Osiris, then briefly revives Osiris by use of magic. This spell gives her time to become pregnant by Osiris. Isis later gives birth to Horus. As such, since Horus was born after Osiris's resurrection, Horus became thought of as the representation of new beginnings and the vanquisher of the usurper Set. And then they talk about, because of this Osiris being killed and rising and then dying again, he ends up taking the place of as the lord or god of the underworld, because that's where the dead are. And Osiris is now basically dead, right? Ta Seker, I don't know how to pronounce it, who resulted from the identification of the creator god with Seker or Seeker, thus gradually became identified with Osiris because of that myth, the two becoming one deity. As the sun was thought to spend the night in the underworld and was subsequently reborn every morning, Da Seker Osiris was identified as king of the underworld, god of the afterlife, life, death, and regeneration. So you see how he got this role, and why the Aeon of Osiris for them is related to death, resurrection, rebirth, and all these themes in the video. But it's not that they're holding up the Aeon of Osiris. When he goes to the realm of the dead, he's destroying Osiris's realm and authority. That's the place where Osiris was ruling. The U.S., the churches, the Christians. He's going to go into their world. They're representing that whole world as the underworld, because that's the world where Osiris is still ruling, and they're going to destroy it. In other words, they're summoning Horus to take the fight to Osiris. They're summoning Horus to come and destroy Christianity, Christians, and whatever's left of Christianity, culture, in the culture. And that's what's going on. And that's why the theater of action is in the underworld. And that's how the underworld is connected to the upper world. I don't know how it's connected to the world of the living. When they go into the underworld here, he's not actually representing himself as conquering in the realm of the dead. He's representing himself as conquering the realm of whatever is left in the real world of the Aeon of Osiris. Where Osiris has dominion, Horus is going to destroy. And by Osiris, of course, that's their pagan way of looking at it. In other words, if you want to put it biblically, where there is dominion of Christ, where there's Christianity, where there's faithfulness, where there's virtue, where there's godliness, that's where they're taking the fight. And so the point behind putting him down here is to show that the attack is against what's left of the faith in the world. Okay, the people and culture and institutions and all of that, and anything that sort of props up that system. And that's what they're going after. So now, while we're talking about that, it's interesting. If you looked here, we said the formula of Osiris, whose word is IAO, these letters. That's a part of it. Deals with magic for them. IO is a magical formula, again from Thelemopedia. The basic formula of IO is one of life, death, and rebirth. Again, Crowley. The principal and most characteristic formula of Osiris of the redemption of mankind. I is Isis, nature, ruined by Apophis, the destroyer, and restored to life by the Redeemer, Osiris. So you get your I-A-O. So you get your Isis, destruction, redemption. Okay. So I guess the idea is it's brought about by Isis as like the mother goddess, then destroyed or dies, and then raised again by Redeemer Osiris. And so you see how the IAO is related to this Aeon of Osiris as well. You even get some of the Isis. So when we look at the board again, notice we have this Evoltion. And instinctively, people want to look and say it's evolution, which makes sense to look at it that way. I think that's how they want us to think about it. Another possibility, which was brought up by two commenters before, but now I finally understand it, I think, is by Midnight M and Kelly Green, both independently, made comments about it. Thank you, by the way. Is this word, which is now obsolete, but it is a real word, and it means a flying up or out. And this is totally consistent with the purpose of this scene. They are, in this scene, doing a conjuring ritual. The point is they're trying to bring out these spirits to accomplish what their aim is with bringing about the Aeon of Horus. And so it is a goal. Their goal is to bring about a flying up or out of hell, if you want to think of it that way. And getting their spirits to come to their back, to do whatever they command, the hounds of hell at their command. And so here we have a word, evolution, that can fill in our blanks, make sense of the context. And what's also interesting is what's missing. I-A-O. Who are they not conjuring? I-A-O. Now, I think that will do a pretty good job explaining why we have this word up here and why the blanks are what they are. Well, one of the objections to having an O here is that if we have the O here, if they have an O here, in the Evil, the love backwards, if we have the O there, then we know that whoever's playing the game called O. The question is, why didn't they put an O here if they called O? So maybe this isn't an O. And I've suggested it could be knew its love in reverse. And I think by leaving these letters out, they give us some flexibility to look at different possibilities and to see it different ways in different directions and all sorts of things, which is consistent with their whole multiple layers of meaning. You can come up with an explanation of why the O isn't here. One, they just didn't put it there because he came in, they interrupted the class or whatever, and they didn't finish putting the letter in. You can come up with a story. I don't think you need a story because I think as long as you have a reason for them to make the exception, you can make sense of the blanks. And in this case, I'm pretty sure, not positive, I think they're leaving I-A-O empty because this is a summoning, Evolation, but they are not summoning Isis or Osiris. And I-A-O together represents Osiris. The formula of Osiris, whose word is I-A-O. In other words, they're not inviting Osiris back. In fact, they're going to take him out. And it's a revolution against Osiris. That's not to say that we don't have other revolutions mentioned here. I say revolution because you see the R. It looks like an R. So we get a evolution, revolution, evolation. We get knew its love. There's a number of possibilities here. And I think there's multiple layers in this scene. And I think that's why they have it this way. Because we know the board goes left to right. We also know it goes right to left. We know we have the evolution poster above the board, so evolution is consistent. We know we have revolutions hinted at here, and here with the R, revolution. We have evolation with the absence of IOA. We know we have a summoning, so this is a calling up or a flying up or out that they're after. All of that makes sense, and I think that's one of their typical multi-layered symbols or messages in the video. Either way, that's what I've got for now. The idea, I think, here is evolation, IOA, IO missing, so no, Osiris is not welcome, but bigger picture here, really important stuff. Why is he in the underworld? He is taking the fight directly to Osiris. That is, he's taking the fight directly to Christianity and what's left of Christian culture and institutions. And so Christians are targets. Now, at the end, we know that God is going to make sure that Christians win. They lose. These guys lose. So it's not to be a cause of fear for us, but it does mean that there can be a difficult time, obviously. And we should be honored to suffer for Christ. All right. Blessings. Like, subscribe, share. Take care. Bye-bye.